I want to spend a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about sliders. Um, Sliders in Insight Maker, not burgers at White Castle, and realize that this is an area that hasn't been touched upon very well in previous videos. So, if a slider is a way to uh, quickly alter the initial value of something at the start of a simulation run, rather than having to open a variable or a stock and change a value, you can simply alter a slider. And you can create sliders on stocks, variables, and flows. And the way that you do that is that if you select it, whether you select a, a variable, a stock, or a flow, the configuration panel on the right will change to provide you with a context relevant to that particular primitive. So if for rabbit birth rate, if I come in here and I say that yes, I in fact want a slider, and you can tell it yes or no, and then I can define the minimum and maximum value for that slider. And since I'm talking about rabbit birth rate, 0 to 1 is probably reasonable min and max. If I then go ahead and click back here, you'll notice that I now have a slider that I can adjust with the name of the variable and whatever the note was developed and attached to that particular variable. Now notice that when I change this, it changes continuously. If, when you set this up, if you leave the slider step blank or set it to 0, you will get you can alter this continuously. And while in certain instances that may be beneficial, sometimes it's really annoying if you in fact want to be able to set a particular value. Now you can come over here and select this and tell it that you really want it to just be 4, though that's sort of defeating the whole idea of a slider. But if I select this and I say that I can change this in 0.01 increments, now when I go back here, notice that it changes in 1/100th of a unit increment, which makes it easier to change, or easier to find particular values. And for this particular slider, I probably really only want to go in 10% increments, so that now it will change 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So you can do that for a variable. You can do it for a stock to identify what the initial value of the stock will be at the time that the simulation starts. And we'll do this so that this is probably 1,000 might be too many. Maybe. 0 to 1,000 rabbits. And we'll set the step size at 25. So now the number of rabbits will vary in increments of 25, and that ends up being the initial value of rabbits when you start the simulation. Now, I said you can attach a slider to a flow, though notice that flow is currently defined to be rabbits times rabbit birth rate. If I go ahead and apply a slider to this, and I say yes, I want a slider, and from 0 to 100 by 5, I now have a slider for births, and when I run this model, it will run, though notice that the growth of the rabbit population is in fact linear, and the reason being is that the slider overrides the formula that I had defined for the flow. So if you if you initially create a slider for something and later put a formula in, and you look and the formula is gone, it's probably because you forgot to disable the slider, and it's the slider that is overriding the formula that you put in here. So that, as I said, this the flow took on the value that I assigned to the slider. So what I really need to do is go back and tell it, no, I don't want a slider on this, and to redefine this formula as rabbits times the rabbit birth rate, and apply that. And now when I run it, I will in fact see the exponential growth curve that I'm expecting. Of course, starting with 200 rabbits, and well, maybe, I don't know. That's an awful lot of rabbits after 20 years. Probably because the rabbit birth rate is set way too high. Probably more like 10 or 20%. So, just a sense to give you an idea that you can in fact attach sliders to a stock, a variable, or to a flow. And when you define the slider, you define the min and max values for that slider, and you can define a step size to make it easier to set it to particular values. If you leave it blank or set it to 0, then it will be a continuous change for that slider. So hope this has been informative, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye.